Hey everyone, John here with a quick news update on Pokémon Sword and Shield, and it seems the game is using the move Payday because it's selling incredibly well. We have details for both the UK and Japan, and you know what, let's start off with Japan. So these are all just physical sales and do not include any digital units. And I preface this because, as of October, Switch digital sales are up 83% year on year. And also keep into account that Pokémon was part of the voucher program, so these numbers really don't reflect the final result. But either way, physical numbers on their own are still really insane. In its first 3 days on the market in Japan, Pokémon Sword and Shield sold 1,364,544 retail copies. This includes Pokémon Sword and Shield, the double pack, and also download cards, but it does not include any eShop sales. So how good is this? What's the context? Well, it's the best-selling Switch game in Japan ever. Pokémon Sword and Shield is outpacing Smash Bros. Ultimate. Smash did 1.23 million and Pokémon did 1.36 million. And between November 11th and 17th, the Switch consoles, including both the Vanilla Switch and the Lite Switch, sold around 180,000 units. So not only is it selling really well, but it's pushing the Switch too. And keep into account there's 10 million Switches out there in the wild in Japan right now, so in its first 3 days, 1 in 10 possible people own Pokémon Sword and Shield in Japan. For even more context, this is double Let's Go of last year, but it is lower than the 3DS entries. It's higher than Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, which did 1.2 million, but it's much lower than Sun and Moon, doing 1.9. But again, digital sales are much higher than 3DS, so who knows what the real number actually is. For all we know, it may even be matching it. And one more thing, this is a $60 game versus a $40 game, so in terms of revenue, it's going to be much higher than 3DS games. So Pokemon's doing amazingly well in Japan, but what about the UK? Well, in terms of Switch hardware sales, Pokémon caused a 30% spike. 90,000 Switch consoles were sold in the UK in this month. The majority of them weren't the Lite, but rather the standard higher battery Switch. But how well did Pokémon do itself in the UK? Well, it's Nintendo's third best launch ever. I'm not talking about the Switch, I'm talking about of all time. Number 1 is Pokémon Sun and Moon, number 2 is Wii Fit, and number 3 is Pokémon Sword and Shield. In addition to that, this is the biggest exclusive game of the year, and the third biggest overall behind FIFA 20 and Call of Duty Modern Warfare. In its opening weekend, Pokémon Sword launched at number 1 in the charts. It then goes Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and then Pokémon Shield. And then if we go all the way down to number 7, there's the Pokémon Sword and Shield Dual Edition, so the double pack. And again, keep into account these are just physical sales. And this is the second best-selling Pokémon game in UK history. We don't have exact numbers, but GamesIndustry.biz says it sold 33% more than Pokémon Black and White on the DS. It is 39% lower than Sun and Moon, but again, digital sales. It's also worth taking into account that Pokémon Sun and Moon launched during the phenomenon of Pokémon Go, so to even compare to that is still very impressive. But yeah, Pokémon Sword and Shield is selling very well, and you can definitely see this with just online discussion and probably looking at your friend list. I mean, look at this. Everyone's playing Pokémon. Apart from this guy. But what do you guys think about Pokémon Sword and Shield selling so well? Let us know what you think down below, and of course be sure to subscribe to Game Explain for a lot more on Pokémon Sword and Shield and other things gaming too. Until next time, wooloo!